Hey, I think we can start. Right, Omar? Could you see everyone?
Okay. Hello,
Right.
everyone. Hello, everyone. Uh, hello. Great to see everyone. Welcome to yet another stellar, indelible literary arts magazine event on Zoom. This evening, our event is titled, Connection and Disconnection in the IKEA Age. And we have two very brilliant poets reading tonight, Mab Jones and Roula-Maria Deeb. But before we get to the poets, I'm going to let Mab Jones give us a little bit of an introduction about why it's titled Connection and Disconnection in the IKEA Age. So Mab, if you would, please.
Thank you so much, Omar. Yeah, basically, it's called that after a poem of the same title or similar title in my forthcoming book. So it's kind of a marketing ploy. But also, I personally don't go to church or anything of that sort. I wasn't brought up in any religion. And I seem to gravitate towards these places where I can be part of a community. And IKEA, strangely, has become one of those forums. And I'm a single person and I go there regularly and I hang out with the families and I pretend that they're perhaps my family. And I love the structure of the IKEA shopping place. You walk through, it's all very controlled. And I just sort of, I feel that there's a kind of community sense, but at the same time, it's not a community at all. People are there to shop and buy cushions and Billy bookcases and that sort of thing. I've got nothing in common with those humans at all, apart from the fact that we all eat our hot dogs together at the end. So it's kind of inspired by that experience. I don't know if any of you do the same as myself and go there with your family card and have your solitary free cup of tea and pretend. I'll just leave an uncomfortable silence there. Rohan, you're raising
I would say I feel like that in airports, actually. I get the same kind of feel at airports.
Yeah.
A different experience at IKEA. I don't eat hot dogs, so I go there for the salmon. That's one thing. Another thing is basically I had this love-hate relationship with it ever since I was a kid. When I was a kid, I hated it. My daughter hates it now, so I think she takes that from me. I go there if I need to. Once you're there, you enjoy it. And yes, I do. I know what you're talking about, Mab. So yes, there is this sense of community. We're all there for, more or less the same purpose, looking for stuff, looking for the home, looking for things to make our lives more comfortable. So yeah, I see it that way too.
But you don't like being controlled, you said. You don't like being told which way to go. And
Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, walking in is an ordeal. Because once you're in, you need to keep walking until you're out. Although some people tell us that there are some exit doors, if you spot them, you can leave earlier than you think you have to, because it takes at least 1 hour to go through the whole thing. But yeah, I mean, it's a love-hate relationship.
Apparently, also there's a group of people who they try and stay overnight in IKEA, and they get into the bed.
We don't have that here.
Yeah, I want to join that group. Really.
Oh gosh, never heard of that, but that sounds amazing for those who love IKEA, of course.
Yeah.
Well, great. So now we know the original inspiration for the title of our event this evening. Just to let everyone know, it's going to be the two main poets, Mab Jones and Roula-Maria Deeb, will be reading for about 25 minutes to half an hour each. And then, of course, we'll have our Q&A at the end for anyone to comment or make questions and ask questions of our speakers this evening. So without further ado, if I may, I'd like to introduce Mab Jones to everyone. And then she will read, and then we'll move on to Roula as well. So Mab Jones is a poet, writer, and radio presenter based in Wales. She has two poetry collections, Poor Queen, Burning Eye Books, 2014, and Take Your Experience and Peel It, Indigo Dreams published that in 2015. She's the founder and editor of Black Rabbit Press, She's also worked as a presenter for BBC Radio 4, especially on programmes related to Welsh themes and content. Mab was the first resident poet at the National Botanic Garden of Wales and was resident writer of Cardiff Wetlands. She received a Literature Matters Award from the Royal Society of Literature in 2019 in order to create a podcast about this. Previously, she has created a podcast for London's Apple and Snakes, where she has headlined for several spoken word events. My apologies, sorry.
You don't have to read all that out.
No, I would like to, I'd like to.
I don't know where that one's come from, actually. Did I send that one? I don't know. It's too long, it's too long.
Well, it's okay. Mab coordinated International Dylan Thomas Day in 2016 and 2017. In 2018, she volunteered to help Dylan Thomas's granddaughter, Hannah Ellis, this is fascinating, in running the day. As part of this, Mab organized a worldwide competition to create the world's poem from collated entries, which was successful. And she, of course, she's won a number of awards, including the John Tripp Spoken Poetry Audience Prize, the Aurora Poetry Competition, the Jeff Stevens Memorial Poetry Prize, and the Rabbit Heart Poetry Film Festival Grand Jury Prize. She has also received a Creative Wales Award. Mab at present is a freelance writer for the New York Times, a reviewer for Buzz Magazine, and mentors poets via the Poetry Society, and teaches creative writing and poetry at Cardiff University. So hopefully you can all join me in welcoming Mab Jones, who's going to read for us now.
Thank you so much. That's the long bio. Gosh, I didn't expect you to read all of that.
I'm very glad he did, because I'm interested in hearing it all.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I always tend to be like future focused, so I never remember all those things. They're gone really quickly, and then I wonder why I don't feel very confident. And you read that out, and it's like, that can't be me. That's surely a different person. Past Mab, yeah, she did some things. I forgot about the world's longest love poem. That was such a great activity to do. Please look that one up. That was really nice. I still run Love the Words poetry competition linked to International Dylan Thomas Day. That's an annual competition. So please keep an eye out for that in May as well, because usually it's quite open and it's about creating the world's longest something, or something nice and kind of more about sharing than competitiveness. So poems I'm going to read today are from books which don't exist for various reasons. Some are from a book that came out last year during the pandemic, and it was kind of a limited run. It was called The Land That Grew Me, and it featured poems about Wales. And the other book is going to be my third collection, and it will be published by Indigo Dreams. And it will be called Yubitsume, which is the Japanese term for cutting off your little finger in order to atone for an offence. I lived in Japan for 3.5 years, and I've been back quite a few times since, and I'm just kind of fascinated with their culture. So that's a little nod to that. So my first poem is from that first book, Poems About Wales, basically. And for me, Wales is a place I sort of love-hate, which is a controversial mix of emotions, because you're meant to love Wales wholeheartedly. And unfortunately, I'm quite critically minded, same as I am towards myself. So I tend to see patriotism as a bit blind, generally. And I tend to focus on ways that the country could be improved. So yeah, I don't speak Welsh as a first language either, and that probably affects my feelings. But I do choose to live here because it's beautiful, badly managed by the government and councils, but beautiful. So this book, it's got poems which are about different places that I've visited here. And the first one I'm going to read is called Regos. This is the land that grew me, she says, as we speed to the top of the Regos, where wild daffs wait like valets at the skirts of the waiting mountain. We park the car near its feet, and she sprints up, confident as a ram, while I stumble, wool-footed, the wet grass filling my daps with water that's winter cold. There are tides swimming within these hills, but I, city dweller, am not familiar with their rhythm or their flow. She disappears into cloud, whilst I sit, flopping on scree composed, I discover, of crystal, coke and slate, stuff I could use to build, heat and decorate a house. But not here, where only the land is, plus the odd tree or sheep, flower or woman, the earth spitting its minerals, offering up, as we clamber down, a cow bone the size of a vase. So connection and disconnection, I basically rarely feel at home wherever I am. I never feel homesick for Wales. I never feel hiraeth. I've never felt that, even when I lived in Japan for those years. But actually, I sometimes feel homesick for Japan, strangely. So some of these poems about Wales sort of touch on this, and also they touch on the fact that I am not a homeowner, and I don't feel very settled quite often. This next poem was written in Pendine. It's imaginatively entitled Pendine. I don't know if you know Pendine at all. It's a huge stretch of golden sand, and it's where the world land speed record was broken in, I don't know, 1920 or around about that time. Pendine. A man tells another man of a different man who once broke the world land speed record here. But this is also where Molly and Millie took their dog child for a walk, back when their love was new, but an old rule made it outlaw. Tell me, which goes faster, the forward hurl of civilization or Cupid's haphazard arrow? Tell me, which is greater, the passion of man's competition with man, or that of two women's embrace? This next one is, again, written when I was sat at a particular spot in Wales. It's a place called Criccieth, which is in the north. And I was sat next to a slip road by the sea. And it's called, Again, I Think of Moving. I don't know about you, but everywhere I go, since I tend not to feel settled or rooted, I imagine going to live there. Do you all do this? Everywhere I go,
I've
literally.
done,
Who'd said they don't?
no, I've done that so many times.
Done that, have you? Okay.
Not everywhere, but yeah.
I generally do that for everywhere. I don't know if that's a normal thing. But yeah, this is a poem about that. It's called Again, I Think of Moving. But what would I do up here in the north, where the sea is blue and moaning, and all the hunched up castles remind me of defeat? What would I do in this titchy village, with little besides a butcher, baker, bargain booze, except eat bloody sausages, too many currant buns, grow fat and alcoholic, and still always think about you? Slip roads are made for slipping Cariad, and waves for postcards or drowning. The north wasn't made for women like me, who can't drive or swim or forget. That's the end of that poem. Yeah, so carrying on with poems of place, that's what we're meant to say. I'm sure most of you are probably poets. We have to use, some of you are doing the hands. Oh, thanks for that. How many of you are poets? I'm sure it's probably 100%. It's usually 100%. It's poets listening to poets, isn't it, at these things? Anyone not a poet? One. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. So yeah, we're meant to say poetry of place, aren't we? And we have to like get one of those into our, our sort of set list at some point. Poem of place. And we're also meant to have facing page poems and we've got to have a sequence at some point. You've got to do all these things, haven't you? So this is a poem of another poem of place, and it's place in West Wales this time, called Cardigan. And I've been a bit obvious in this poem, maybe because cardigan is also my favourite ever item of clothing. So this is about both of those things, the place and cardigans, literal, it's called Cardigan. So named, she thought, for a once Wales, where people coddled their limbs in knitted things, roped together by the cabled hands of women, their tongues and needles clicking as the men went out to hunt and shear the silvered fish and blossoming lambs beneath the bosomy hills and over a sense of history as sure as the ribboning river. Now a supermarket shines too bright near the town, where rooftop aerials spear the ether, cut crackling holes in her cloudy sense of what was. The women knitting their brows as the men click remote controls, screens glowing renditions of a past both true and not true, overly splendid but simple, a woolly perception she cradles as her cranium plain stitches the name. I don't know how much you know about Wales, but you've got this sort of idea of this grand past that never really existed. So yeah, I like to write about that and put it in people's faces a bit, except how many people read poetry? Well, your 10 friends, that's who. Thanks people I know as well for being here. Bernard, Abir, both very excellent poets. Mary, I think that's the Mary I know. It's great to see you here. Isn't it nice to do a poetry thing in the afternoon as well, rather than in the night when I'm like middle-aged and tired now? Moving
Well, it's
on.
night here, so
It's night there, yeah. So this is a poem again about Wales. Sorry, I love Wales and I choose to be here. That's all I can really say. I'm just a bit conflicted. I can't seem to, I want things to be better than they are. It's a sort of a love that does, you know, I'm not, if I was a parent, I wouldn't want my child to like just get a C in, you know, all C's or D's. I want them to get A's or, you know, B, but do your best. And that's how I feel about this country too. But this one is a little bit, it's a bit, I was in having a negative moment and it's called Wales, but spelled W-A-I-L-S. And I'm just going to read it and hope, you know, hope there are no patriots listening and or that they don't catch hold of this on YouTube or wherever it's going. Anyway, Wales. And the wind is awful, like so many sales calls, always at you, a stranger in your ear. And the rain is constant, like all those demands, dropping on the doormat, which is you. And the hills are boring, an unending harassment, nagging their demands, on foot and on eye. And the sea is a torment, biting at your nerve's edge, whispering in corners like a drunk. Have to admit, I also quite enjoy being a bit naughty. So if the patriots or the, you know, the nationalists do get hold of that one and harass me, I might kind of get off on that a little bit. So I will do just a few more poems, I think. Maybe 4 or 5 more. This next one is from the new collection, which will be out sometime next year. It's actually delayed from last year. It's been a weird old time, hasn't it? Yeah, so hopefully winter or spring, maybe. And there are quite a few sonnets in this book. And I wrote those during the Shakespeare 400 year. When was that? Was that 2017 or something? 2018? Anyone
so,
remember?
yeah.
16, I think, wasn't it?
Was it 16? My God.
16.
Poetry is a slow, slow business. I do have a day job. I currently work for the NHS. Yeah, things there are moving so, so quickly. This is the opposite of that world. So this old poem now, I shall read out for you as if it is new. Please buy the book when it comes out. This one's called The Constellations. Today I look for the constellations, in the weeds, greening through the platform cracks, in the graffiti behind the station, thick and colourful as koi. I give thanks as I board the train for these small rafts of colour amidst the drowning grey. We are all dying, but that patch of grass is medicine. The train rolls its way into the valleys, slow yet determined, and I count flowers, lose myself in trees. Take me away. The train obeys and winds its path along the ticking track, the breeze whispering at the glass, the world slowing. No me, no you, and in the end, no knowing. Not sure I'm happy with a rhyming couplet, but it's a sonnet, therefore it's okay. My next poem is the title of the forthcoming book, Yubitsume, which is sort of a cliche thing that you think of when you think of Japanese culture. Did live there for quite a number of years, and yeah, but Japanese is not so great anymore. I seem to have forgotten a lot of it. I kind of remember every time I visit how to say the basic things. But this is such a kind of interesting concept. As I said, it's that idea that you cut off one of your fingers if you're a member of the Yakuza, obviously, not just a general everyday sort of, person. And it's something you would do to atone for committing some grievous offence. There's a lot of cutting off of limbs and heads in this book. Not sure what was going on with me when I was writing these pieces, but maybe it's that idea again that I don't often feel connected to, well, other humans or the land where I live or the culture. Yeah, that's probably why. So yeah, the title poem, Yubitsume. When the trees begin to flame, it's time to forage through my room for those Yakuza-style gloves, the ones with every finger chopped, so I can keep working through winter. I push my chilled fingers into the black knitted tubes, the ends erupting rudely, the thumb tsunami blunt. My pinky no longer glows from promises it won't keep. Winter is approaching, and I need to think just of myself. When the birds start forming arrows, I cut the ties of summer, break off that June romance, slam my fingers at the keypad until every digit burns. Now I'm rereading it, I also must admit to you all, I do copywriting for a living, and this is the time of year where I have to suddenly write a lot of articles, not just for this month, but for next month. And those gloves are actually just by there. And I do have to start, I've got to get all the money in before the year ends. It's awful. Yeah, I've got the day job and I do copywriting. So it's a literal poem about having to work, basically. My next poem is called Valley Takes a Bath, and it's from that book with Poems of Wales in it, which is available from Selkirk Station Press. I think they might have done a reprint. I'm not sure. I don't know. I wrote this at a place called Scandervale, which is a kind of Hindu temple. It's just outside Carmarthen. It's really a great place if you ever visit Wales. They have a temple elephant, and her name is Valley. And so this is a poem about meeting her. Valley takes a bath. I step through a hatch of shadow and wear nose to trunk, my white eye drawn up to that one which is liquid as amber, brown as a coconut, tufted lashes thick as the brush the monk uses to soap the creature clean. Valley is 2 years younger than I am, but her wrinkles are rivulets to let the water run, to hold the mud her dermis needs to breathe. She was born as my hands, my face will become, lined and creased, parchment pressed into shape around the cosmic dust of bones. I watch as she dips the soft lips of her trunk into the metal bowl and blasts her body with suds. Brother bathes her twice a week, he says, sloughing the flesh from her hulk so it can replenish. The fresh skin, a regeneration which, in this land, requires man's hand in the place of palms. My own show paths fanning into futures I won't know, as the frayed map edge of her ears gently furl, the mala beads of her forehead shine. Her strength and her tenderness are as everyday and as unstoppable as time, as humble and as powerful as a birth. She is a fire breath of life, wrapped in a dinosaur form, natal yet ancient, primordial, but still in the hands of the priest, as, during our end, that great cleansing we all are.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Thank you. I like that one. I love animals, and sometimes you just feel inspired to write something like in that moment, and you have to write it then and there. That was one of those, and it did win a competition, that one, and it was judged by Penelope Shuttle, who I really love such a lot. And that's kind of why I ended it. I thought she would like it. It's very subjective, those things, but the fact that she chose it meant a lot to me. And I'll just do one more poem, I think. This one is IKEA Communion, which is the title, or sort of title, of this event. And I've already talked about that one. It's the final poem in the forthcoming book. I have a pen and I can go anywhere. And even if I forget my pen, here there are always pencils. And even though I am just one person, I have a family card which gives me free tea. And so I sit amidst the families, eating meatballs, blobs of happy coloured sauce dribbling down toddlers' chins. Together we sit. It is communal in a way. And after we wander, me alone in joggers, hoodie, meandering the fake homes, touching the corners of cushions, amongst the mums in their blouses and dresses, the dads in tees and jeans, and all the children, from little yowling babies to moping teens. Here we are together, passing the Billy bookcase, the scarlet lamp, which shines on them and I alike. And after we eat our hot dogs, the cheap buns squishing in our fingers, the mustard warming our mouths, I've paid my 50p, same as you, my few-hour family. And in this day, this IKEA age, it is a communion of sorts. Thank you very much. I will finish there.
Thank you so much.
That was brilliant.
That
Thanks
was
for
really
listening.
That
beautiful.
was
And
amazing.
soulful work,
Wow.
but also, in my view, wonderfully at times understated, makes it even more soulful. I thought it was beautiful.
Thanks so much.
And I think now we move on to Roula-Maria Deeb, our next poet. Roula is a poet, editor, and literary scholar whose works have appeared in several journals and books. She has authored 2 books, the first being Jungian Metaphor in Modernist Literature, which was published by Routledge in 2020, and is currently the finalist for the International IAJS Book Awards. I believe that's the International Association of Jungian Studies, I'm guessing. Good, okay. And a poetry collection, which I had the privilege to introduce, Simply Being, published by Chiron Press in 2021. Roula is the founding editor of literary and arts journal Indelible, of which our event this evening is an instance, and a creative producer of literary event series Indelible Evenings, such as tonight, as well as Site Creative. Many of you probably have attended those great events, a monthly event for artists and writers with a background in Jungian psychology. Roula is also the food blogger behind Beyond Zucchini and a member of the Poetry Society, the British Association for Modernist Studies, the International Association for Jungian Studies, and the Jungian Society for Scholarly Studies. She teaches it is a Moodle, M-O-O-C. I'm sorry, I just... MOOC, yes. She teaches a MOOC titled Why Online Creative Communities Matter on academia.edu, and she's currently my colleague and friend at AUD, Assistant Professor of English at the American University in Dubai. So Roula, we look forward to your work.
Thank you so much, Omar. And I want to thank Mab again for being tonight with us, for the wonderful poetry and the very, very original idea of connection and disconnection in the age of IKEA. I'll never look at IKEA the same way again, that's for sure. And thank you for the beautiful imagery, for the wonderful, wonderful 30 minutes that we just had. And all the best of luck in your next book, which we are greatly looking forward to reading, and also hosting you again to launch the book and to, to hear some more samples from it. Well, okay, I'm going to be reading first from Simply Being, which is the book that came out January 2021, and it's beginning to feel old already. So I don't know if that's a natural thing. I mean, Mab and Omar, you are much more prolific and you've written so many poetry books before. So I don't know if that's a natural thing to feel, that's your first poetry collection, but how connected and how disconnected are you from the very first book that came out? So you might share the same feelings. I don't know.
I pretend my first book doesn't exist. So because I was a performance poet then, and it's got like very funny poems in it. So just it's out of print now. I just mention it like it's a thing, because we're counting up the collections, aren't we? But I hope no one gets hold of that one.
I find personally my first collection has one or two pieces which are some of my best work, because I was still at that time kind of striving to impress people. Then I got not many accolades, but just got lazy and ended up writing a lot more lazy poetry, basically. So it depends. Roula, you're going to be reading for about 25 minutes to half an hour, I believe, from both Simply Being as well as work for your forthcoming collection, right?
Yes, things that are new, things that are from the forthcoming collection, which I will talk a little bit about in a bit. Okay, so this poem, Mab liked it, so I'm going to be reading it. It's called Aurora. I think the first person that ever saw it was Omar many, many years ago. And it made its way into this book. Omar thought it was too abstract, and I agree. I mean, it's supposed to express flashes of color. And these flashes of color represent the different feelings and impressions that you feel when you meet somebody for the first time. So this is the sense of connection, actually. So we meet people that we feel we have met many times before. And these thoughts and these feelings, they just come to us like flashes of color, like little auroras in the sky. So here we are again, in the now, in the know, a voice among the echoes, a flicker, a dance among the gleam, ever an indigo vibrancy, the iris of the mind, encircling, vibrating rhythmically in a cerebral dance. Light of light, very God of very God, not unbeknownst to me from the beginning, another life, another realm, so far yet so near, there as it is here and nowhere. Now as it was then, lights palpate by vision, whispering, waving, calling from the tower, Tor, a shout, thunder, Thor. Baptisia blends with the coat of many colors, pulling me closer, drifting forward, all the way to the golden thread, pulsating backwards, special coating to join the heart of Abraham. Beating breath, throbbing light, flaring spirit, throwing crimson fuel onto the famished light. Thoughts stir, inspiration stalks us, she says. Telepathy of healers, hearers of secrets, seeing her signatures in all things we read, forever contemplating, coming back to listen, to love, to live. And so we are here again, one more time, and time again, knowing the truth, being us, being them, simply being, many times and forever. So the title of the book is actually a verse in this poem. Another poem I'm going to be sharing is called The Icon Speaks. And it's about the reality of symbols and the reality of many people and many things and many concepts that act as symbols in our lives. In a sense that they are not what they actually are, but they are what they represent. So they tie us into the cosmos at a different level. Today she arises beyond paint and gold, a sweating, breathing image, not of hard wood, but of solid being, with a voice as soft as the vapor of her fading image, as concrete as her emerging existence, encouraged into this world where she speaks melodies, as the other world, that of symbols, dissipates. Clouds precipitate, and from that realm she moves serendipitously into the world of synchronicities. Whatever caused the conjuring or beckoning, there it was, the rapport between two realms, conversing right before my eyes. What have I called, pressed, or summoned? Like an accidental portal into the seafloor, deep, right into the lap of a cockle shell. Aphrodite blooms into this reality. So this is from Simply Being. And these two poems are about connection. The first one, the feeling of being connected when you first meet someone. And the second poem being about the feeling of connection into the universe through symbols and through how they materialize into our lives in many different ways. Okay, now that was from the old period. Let's take a look at some of the new poems now. And as Mab read, some of them are poems of place. I'm just going to be sharing my screen here. Sorry. All right, that's the folder. Okay, so different themes, all themes of connection and disconnection in a way. Maybe I'll start with this one. I'm part of a union arts-based research group, and we meet every month and do some practical arts-based research. And we did some things on poetry. And we started with doing a found poem, and we were working on Carl Jung's The Transcendent Function. I called the poem Aestheticization, which is a word found in that chapter. And I keep a dream diary for the images that kind of linger right after you wake up. And we were weaving some of the images that we have in the dream diaries with the with some of the words that we found in the chapter that we were looking at. Dangerous affects, those cuttlefish in a river, are not psychological water cures. As a whole, aestheticization is renewal, adding essence to evergreen, like rosemary shoots on a Christmas tree. Give the unconscious credit, but operate with consciousness. Twist it. It's a strand of hair around a coquettish finger. Justified ego is the other voice. Misophonia is an indispensable condition. The human community, that congregation of fir needles, points in the direction through the mirror. The right to exist is a fridge magnet on a whiteboard. That touchstone, though, personality. This one is another found poem, but I wasn't looking at any particular page. I was looking at the pantry in the house. And the sense of connection here is connecting with your homeland, with your culture. And in this In this case, it is Lebanon, my native country. Life lives here, sprouting beyond the mustard seed, beneath the lined eyes of fava beans, waitlisted in the wings of a weevil. Like Mad Libs, it fills in the blanks on the shelves, mixing opposite worlds of oil and vinegar, sugar and chickpeas, clary sage and syrups. And in between, neither east nor west, lies a land, middle child syndrome. Hummus is a sticky situation caught between pita sides. Change sings, not in hymns, but in cacophonies of bergamot peels, brushing kisses on a grater's lips, as flasks of pomegranate molasses hide genies and stories in magma, molten gold. Plums and almonds exist here in double being, once pickled, once dried. Olive jars, once bitter, are now the salt grains in the middle. I try to not overdo it with the olives in my poems, but they keep finding themselves somewhere. This one is about, this one was inspired by the Mediterranean salt beds, or salinas, as they are called. And it's called fleur de sel, which is the flower of salt. And this is, it's regarded as the delicacy of salts. So you see them floating at the top of the salt beds, and they're usually more expensive and more valued than the other salt that makes its way up later. Snowflakes of summer sterilize your face with mineral mandalas. At the dinner table where Yam and Poseidon sat, sharing bread and salt. Fleur de sel, a brackish kiss, crusts on a closing wound, hushing the depths into saline flavors of secrecy. Mare Nostrum, waves, once a dance floor, a spring of journeys, but now in the rarity of relish, water is a flammable destination. Let the crystal dust rise like a chrysalis for the dormant. A very good way of connecting with any culture, especially your own culture, is through food. And my next book is about culture through food, about what it reminds me of, about what it represents. Some of them contain some historic backgrounds, but through verse. This one is called Coating Fog, and it had undergone the knife of Mab's poetry surgery a few months ago. I changed the name. It was Essence of Rose, and then we changed it, and it's about the rose cordial. So it's rose syrup, you mix it with water, add ice. It's a very popular summer drink. A ruby chalice, smelling of rosariums, stories tell us again how you were shed from Aphrodite's rib. Remind us why we, like Mark Antony, fell in love slipping into a fragrance. Translucent cups frozen into lines on the coating fog, through smiles sketched, the sanguine-colored drink now transparent. Light reveals the core of the wound, a place where motion spoons through the icebound layer, cracking into all we drink. This is about another food. This is a dessert. In Lebanon, it is called ashta. Of course, it has many names depending on where on the Mediterranean you are. It is actually, I mean, they say it is a native Syrian ice cream. It is the beaten ice cream. So it's made from mastic and cream, and it tastes different. So it's not the typical vanilla ice cream. It's white, but it is very smoky in flavor. Because of you, we are thirsty for water and all other necessary pleasures. Cream curdling with salep, in the spirit of orange blossoms, sweetened with reflections. Freeze, you are humbly pounded into glory. Ice stretches without breaking, like snow outlining the heads of the mountain range, bridging lands unbound to binaries. You come in frozen torches, pierced with Aleppo fields. We praise every pistachio pebble, guarding the secret of your mystic mastic. So, like many people around the world, we weren't able to travel for almost 2 years. And the first place we went to, the only place we went to actually after lockdown and after we were able to travel was to Lebanon. And my husband and I were taking an early morning walk to some of the places that we used to go to when we were kids. So many memories and so many things to think about. We were contemplating the flowers, we were contemplating the smells, some of them very familiar. They took us back many, many decades. It's called A Breeze Cannot But Pass. Lebanon, like many neighboring countries, such as Palestine, is going through a very, very tough situation right now. It's always been actually, but now it's kind of worse than ever. And the thing is, it was a very hot summer day when I wrote this poem, but I felt that no matter how warm and sticky it is, a breeze would always pass. And I thought, hoping that this would happen to Lebanon and the rest of the region, I thought that this could be a message of hope. So I called the poem A Breeze Cannot But Pass. Downhill, uphill. Footsteps strike a percussion of memoirs to the rhythm of a hiker's metabolic raid in July sun. Heat. Hair thickens into wool. Broomstick bristles. A breeze would always pass by to comb those strands, rooted in sculp made on this very root. Inside, like outside, is a garden. Everything here has its roots. We water them so our days can prosper, like those geraniums flickering in red waves from old milk tins. Tatra, Regile, Nido. Children grew up with Nido. We inhale the breath of cyclamens as coffee moves into the scent of the rubicea dropped on the ground like touch on a jasmine trail. In one briny olive at the breakfast table, I taste my sister's longing, diaspora, locked in lands distant as incomprehensible thoughts, the sweetness of caramelized onions. I remember they were once raw and tear-inducing. A breeze cannot but pass to cool the wounds where the paths close. And it was, for some reason, during the writing of this poem that I discovered that coffee and jasmines come from the same family, which is the Rubiaceae. So you do learn when you write poetry sometimes. Mind the Gap is a poem with a different voice, slightly different voice. And it's one of the lockdown poems, actually. Mind the Gap. I promised myself not to write another lockdown poem, but like an empty bottle of shampoo, there's still the chance of squeezing out one more spoonful of liquid bubbles. I cannot but mind the gap between the now here and the now there. But it's the next now that we count on from this moment. The now when cues will be scary little adventures, but doable anyway. The now when the hilly bosom of the green park is sprinkled with the loud confetti of laughter and busy conversation. When the open air is breath inhaled by the sun, by the open museum doors nearby. When people and paintings are no longer one and the same, no longer frozen. Guardian Stars will be published in the Dawn Treader, I think next month. Sometimes it helps to know this will all end in one big laugh. The one urchin of a dream from the rocky bottom, a high hurdle to pass and with flying colors. It tickles a pair of eyes into wakeful temptation, to look up and realize that wherever you are, no matter the woolly thickness of fog, the stars will always be with you, pinning the night into place. I guess I will stop here. Thank you all for bearing with me. And
thank you, Rhoda. That was wonderful. That the line, pinning the night in place. Beautiful way to end. It's full of color, full of sensuality. Beautiful poem.
Thank you.
So now, everyone, I believe we're going to open up the floor to any questions or comments anyone would like
Oh,
to make.
Omar, could you not give us a poem or two? Because
Oh, well,
I was
waiting
going to
for you
ask,
it.
yes,
yeah,
please do.
No, I'll try and find one of my. I've got one I wanted to read. It's actually on my
yeah,
desktop.
because
So
Rian couldn't make it today. She had an emergency, health emergency. So yeah,
Unfortunately, but hopefully she'll be joining us again soon. We're hoping.
let me just share screen.
Roula,
if I
thank you
may.
so much for reading. I know I asked you to do that.
Thank you, Mab. Thank you. Thank
Because
you for asking me to do
read your
that.
poems
It's
and
it's not easy reading poems after you, Mab. I mean,
you're very
it's really, really a
kind.
challenge.
No, that was lovely.
Thank you so much for
I
being
thought
here.
both poets were fantastic, but they're also very different voices, I think. So it was a wonderful kind of nice variety of approaches to verse. I'm gonna, if you don't mind, can I read I'll read this one, if I may. I believe it's on the screen, is it?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, good. Put it at 100. So yeah, I'll give you the background quickly. It's the last poem in my forthcoming collection, Morning Lit Portals After Alio. It's a very personalized and personal collection. Insofar as it talks about relationships, mainly with my daughter, my parents, my other half, and so on. This poem, actually, as it happened, I was contacted a few months ago by my alma mater, Exeter College at Oxford. And they were contacting alumni who'd had some sort of literary career afterwards to help with materials for a campaign for the library. And with that, I tried to, but I ended up doing this instead. I wrote a poem after a chat with a lovely person in the staff of Exeter. And then they took it for the Exeter College Register 2021, which is like, a typical university publication about alumni, faculty, the typical university publication. So it's titled 20 Years in the Making. And like a lot of my poetry, it's not, it's more a practice of trying to use language in a kind of, at least attempt to use language in a pure and coherent way. It's not the most imagistic of writing, but I tend to be quite a more reflective in my verse than imagistic. But anyway, 20 years in the making. It's a bit sad, so please don't be too depressed. It ends on a good note, which is what I want to end my book with. So 20 years in the making. If I look back through the tunnel of 20 years, I see this boy, graceful and more, fueled by a weird desire to be graceful. And yet I can count the fears possessing him, a string on an abacus whose beads addle and grin like the simplest numbers, far less than what he might have wished for, and more like the way that wish was pressed, all unrest, with the sense of a muffled, of a broken need. And here he is again, a whittled number now held in sight of a whittled eye. And below the surface of 20 years, the far deeper show, a sort of beast disclosed, revealed by a human sound. It's so darned long ago, and long ago when love was a round corner he grappled with, the long if young men greet in so many different ways. 20 years are flown, and 20 years that stay. And perhaps the way the years have fallen are no one's fault but mine. But to begin the effort to uncoil the spring, to unlock the bone-sad bales and sheaves of meaning, is a project for a different man, older, younger, who can tell? For the harvest of these passing years goes summed in two stark ways. I survived the human terror, but live beneath the tenor of what was always meant for me. And any winnings through it all are like 20 and like 10, two different numbers, speaking to each other across a wind-picked valley. So many things I wished for, things set deep in me, things for which I built as best I could my fort of life, have been split and sundered from my mind. But I look back across the rough topography of 20 years, feel my feet whisper across the hard-pressed turf, and think that, for all that, I've been luckier than most. Thanks. That's my one contribution today. Yeah. Unfortunately, I should say that when I write poetry, I tend to be quite not understated, but more overstated and grandiose. But that's just my persona. So either like it or you hate it. But anyway, thank you, the poets Rula and Mab. That was a
Thank you,
wonderful
Omar.
evening.
Thank you.
And now we've got an open Q&A. So whoever would like to say something, a question to the poets, or perhaps a comment, it's the floor is open. If anyone wants to make a comment, just please do. Thank you, Bernard. Please do put it in the chat box or put your hand up or what have you. Any ways is fine.
I guess so that we'll be able to see the hands up. I will need
Jade's got
to
her
put
hand
this
up.
on gallery view again.
Jade
So
has
I
got
will
her
need
hand
to.
up and Bernard has got his hand up too.
So
Oh,
Bernard,
okay. Bernard.
okay,
Jade.
let's start with Bernard, shall we? Hi,
Well,
Bernard.
it's so lovely. I enjoyed both readings, and as you say, Omar, they were very different. It's a question for Mab, really, because Mab and I have known each other for a long time, and I knew her when she was a performance poet, and she's a brilliant performance poet, very funny, very naughty, very rude. And I just wondered, looking back at things, which do you prefer, Mab? Do you prefer the performance or the written or the writing? Now, you know.
Yeah, I prefer the writing now. So I stopped being a performance poet in 2015, but unfortunately people won't let go of it and keep asking me to do things. And I get there and I'm like, oh, you want Mab of 2012, not 2021. And then I feel obliged to do some of those old poems because they have wrongly, or maybe I'm the victim of my own excellent marketing skills, you know, but I don't want to do those poems anymore.
No, so it doesn't give you a buzz. It doesn't give you a buzz. It doesn't give you a buzz in the way that now you're writing, because what you're writing now is you know, is so beautiful, but it is very different to and very reflective, and you know, it's almost like there are two Mabs, isn't it? Really, in some ways, you know.
I feel like I am quite changeable as a person, or same as everyone here. I've got, you know, multiple aspects of self, and partly I have realized I'm quite good at acting, and I didn't realize this about myself, but also it's like a true acting, like I really feel that facet of myself. So maybe the Mab on stage feels real, but it's just one part of me, and it's not a part that I really want to engage with at the minute. But I do enjoy being naughty. You're right, Bernard. Bernard. Is it Bernard or Bernard? I haven't seen you for such a long time.
My headmistress, my American headmistress, used to call me Bernard, and I hated it, so it's Bernard.
Bernard. Yeah. Thank you for your question, though. But no, those poems, I don't respect them. They were very rude, and it was fun. It was fun because I was on the comedy circuit for a bit, but also you have to repeat yourself a lot when you do comedy. I don't like doing that.
I suppose I'm interested because I've done a bit of performance poetry over the years, and I never really got much of a buzz out of it particularly. And so I'm glad that I don't do anymore, because actually that gives me opportunities to do more writing, really. And I like the writing. I've always liked the writing more than the performance. So I'm just interested in what you're saying, really. Yeah, it's good stuff. Thank you.
I've still got your father's book, Bernard.
Have you? Oh, God.
Yeah, it's a good book.
Oh dear, yeah. I'm going to make another. I'm going to do reprint because it's very small print. But so there will be a reprint at some stage.
Okay, let me know.
No, I one comment to make. I do think that you know, a non-performance poet, a page poet, and I'd like to read some of your work, Mab, off the page, because there is a difference even within page poetry, hearing it live and reading it as a text on the page, because you have that hushed silence with, you know, many of you probably have this experience that when you're reading a poet you admire or you enjoy, you have this kind of solitude in your mind when you're reading them off the page. although I thought your your delivery, sorry, of the work
Omar,
was
do not
very,
use the P word.
yeah, I won't, sorry.
Do not.
It was very suggestive of how it would read off the page as well, by the way. That's what I felt. And one question I want to ask both Rula and Mab was what's your thoughts about ending poems, like the last line or the last cadence, what have you? Like, do you ever have a tick or kind of thing that happens when you write poetry about how you end the poem?
Rula, do you want to go first?
For me, the poem kind of ends itself, by the way. I never know when to stop. I write it and then I see, you know, it kind of gives itself its own finality. Sometimes though, when you feel that it still has some unfinished business, and instead of thinking about how to end it, I sort of end it earlier. You know, and I feel like the poem is still continuing, but it's not really getting anywhere. I end it. So I end up chopping off the last 3 lines or so.
Thanks, Rula.
I mean, usually.
Mab, do you have any kind of, you know, repeated experience about how you use endings or how you work with the endings of your poems?
I like to make a comment to
Oh, sorry,
Am I allowed
Jade.
to- Hi. I like to make a comment to Mab, but I just want to be sure I'm saying her name right. Is she still here? But anyway, am I being heard? Can you guys hear me right now?
Yes, we can hear you, Jade. I think everyone can. I
Okay.
can.
Well,
Good.
whether she's here or not, I did notice that she has excellent word choice and being able to express imagery in few words, but you get the clear image. And I also noticed that her reading was, for me, the way it would be if I was to read it to myself on the page. Like that, all like exactly, you know, how it would be if you read it on the paper. And it kind of made me think of this creative writing tip I had heard from a past college professor about how when you want to make a powerful point, sometimes you have to kind of go step back in a way and like almost in a way, what they say, like the tip of the iceberg, you know, just show like a kind of like a slightly detached scene from the powerful meaning. And then when you read it, that's where you find the power in that kind of subtlety, like the tip, you know, of the iceberg. So I did hear that, or maybe perceive that in her poems. I really love those. And I do have another comment to make, but I don't want to take up too much time. I'm just gonna.
No, please do, Jade. It's fine.
Okay. I have heard Rula read a few times before, maybe many times. And something that always comes to mind in a kind of subconscious way when I hear her poems, especially about food or fruit, you know, is that I've always seen food in a way in everyday life as being like very casual. Like someone will be like, I'll be like, oh, I wrote a poem today. And somebody else will be like, I ate this like delicious hamburger. And like they'll describe all the layers of the hamburger. And for me, there was always like a separation between the description of what we eat, say for a quick pleasure or, you know, for sustenance, and an actual symbolic poem. But I find that Rula in her poetry allows you to actually like taste and like experience the physical pleasure of the food. And it doesn't feel trivial. Like you get like you feel what's deeper and connected and universal about the experience of the food at the exact same time. So I find that very like amazing, skillful way of writing poetry, and I appreciate that. So I just wanted to share those.
Thank you, Jade.
Awesome.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Jade. Thank you, Jade.
Thank you.
I
mean, for me, I don't know if it's because of my diet or not, but you know, most of the food that I eat is vegetarian. So
Yes.
When it's plant-based, it's earth-based. When it's earth-based, it's a connection to nature. And this is why I see food the same way I would see flowers or trees or grass. So
like
that's
it
why
doesn't seem like a quickly explained indulgence kind of thing, like as if you were talking to somebody on the phone who like was just like, oh, I just had this martini, it's just like you get that familiarity and like, direct kind of feeling, like as if it was a conversation, but it's like so much more than just that. So I love that.
Thank you.
Jade.
Thank you, Jade.
Yes, I agree with you, Jade, on both those points. I think Roula does have this sensuality in her verse that lets you kind of viscerally taste what you're seeing on the page you're reading. And Mab, yes, I think Mab does have that beautiful trick of just slightly suggesting something more than what she says, which allows the reader or the listener to kind of do the rest of the work, as it were. I think that's what you meant, and I think that's a wonderful skill. From what
Definitely,
I've heard.
I've heard you, Omar. I've heard you read, I think once before, maybe I'm mistaken. I did, right? But basically in this reading, something that came to mind right away was your ability to write a poem that is taking place over a long period of time and still have it, not be like a whole 500-page telling of it. And that's really impressive. A lot of people don't, when they think of poetry, I love lyric poetry, direct, short, single moments, but you went to like, far back in time and then to the present in your poem. So I do, I honor that in writing to be able to do that.
Thank you. So does anyone else have any more comments or questions? Yes, sorry, Bernard.
I just wanted to comment on Mab's last poem, which for me, just knocked it out of the park. I just thought that was such a beautiful poem. And for me, there's something about it. There's something about when the heart actually comes into a poem, it comes to life. And for me, as it Valley, I've just found that entrancing. And it's because, I believe it's because it was actually written from the heart and from a real deep sense of actually, I don't know what, but it just strikes me again, all good poems, and yours, Omar, because your poem is, it gave a sense of time and a sense, but it also was written, it was articulate because it articulated the heart. And I just think that's so wonderful when people can do that. And Roula's poetry is so deliciously vibrant and colourful. And I treat food like fuel. I'm afraid I'm not particularly interested in food. As long as I get fed, I don't care. And I can't stand all the sort of messing about food. But Roula has convinced me that you can write about food in a beautiful and quite deep, profound way. And what you just said about coming from the earth, I might even read a restaurant guide in the future now, because I've heard someone speak so beautifully about food. So thank you, the three of you. I thought it was wonderful.
Thank you, Bernard.
Thank you, Bernard. Thank you. You are a wonderful poet. One of Indelible's favorite poets.
No, bless you. Oh, well, it's lovely to see you. And now I have to go now, because funny enough, I've got to go and do my sausage and chips for tea. So I'm going to say bye-bye and take care. Lovely to see you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Bernard.
Bye-bye, Omar.
So anyway, I can't see anyone in the chat box entering any questions.
Glenda.
Sorry, Miriam.
Please let me renew my congratulations to all of you on your wonderful poetry. I've so much appreciated your poems, and I was fascinated by Mab's Christian name, Mab. As Mab recalls Queen Mab, no? So who was a fairy, who is a fairy, referred to in Shakespeare's play Romeo and Juliet, no? But Queen Mab is a political, Queen Mab is also a political epic by Shelley, the poet Shelley, in which the fairy Queen Mab takes the spirit of Yante on a time and space journey to reveal the ideal nature of humanity's potential behind the mistakes of history and the blind acceptance of outward shows of power. So I was curious to know whether how much you have in common, how much do you think you have in common with the Shakespeare's fairy or with the Shelley's spirit?
Yeah. Well, I of course know of these because Mab is not my real name. It is a pen name that I chose based on those works and the mythic figure of Queen Mab, yes. So I would love to be, as she is, the bringer of dreams to men. When I was a performance poet, I would go on stage and say, actually, I'm the bringer of nightmares to men. And people would laugh at that, hilarious. But yeah, I mean, it's nice to have a kind of a mythic name, unlike my real name, which is something very plain and boring, like Jane or Rachel. Not that there's anything wrong with those names, but Mab seems much more poetic, I think. So yeah, thank you for picking up on that. Most people just assume it's my actual name, but pen names are great, aren't they? You can be anyone.
So congratulations on your choice.
Yeah, thanks.
We learned today.
Is that an allusion in your book, Poor Queen? Is it connected
Yes,
with that?
partly, and also there are some political poems in there, and there's one about Queen Elizabeth.
Right. Okay.
So yes, I think Glenda has a question.
Yes, Glenda has a question.
Whenever I come across a new poet that I'm about to read or listen to, I usually look up their biography or autobiography to learn more about them. And I'm really convinced, Maeve, that you have gone through a right to be forgotten episode in your life, because I could find out nothing about your life. And now you tell me Maeve is not even your real name. So I'm wondering what you are apart from your poetry. But my question, not to be too personal, is I'm very curious about your sojourn in Japan. I have another poet friend in Ireland who spent years in Japan and came back with a Japanese wife as well. And I'm just wondering, what period of your life did you go to Japan, and what brought you there?
I lived there from the age of 23 to 26. And I went there to teach English, because if you're a British person, you can get a visa, which is a 3-year visa to do that. But I'd always wanted to live there. I'd always wanted to visit there. And I think that's because when I was a child, I saw some of the woodblock prints that are really well known, you know, The Wave and other works of that sort. And when I was there, I did study woodblock printing, actually. Yeah, I wanted to be an artist when I was younger, not a poet. Yeah, and then I came back after 3 years, but I've been back 3 times since, and I've performed there on 2 of those occasions. And I feel like such a longing to go there, especially during cherry blossom season, of course, which is like March and April. I lived in Kyoto, which has got more temples and shrines than bus stops. The only reason I don't actually live there is because I could not obtain a Japanese wife, because I'm a woman. You know, and all the Western guys would get a wife and they would be very happy and they would have a lot of female attention. If you're a Western woman, it's the opposite experience. And now I have a lovely partner here, but I couldn't get one there, so I had to come back.
Yeah, I was wondering, it's also like, I belong to a couple of poetry groups that work with the haibun and haiku. We're quite devoted to those forms, which of course originate in Japan. I was wondering, I know that you were looking for art, not poetry, but what is your, do you have any sense of connection to the Japanese poetic forms, or is that another sort of dimension you're not really interested in?
Yeah, no, I've written a book of haiku. It came out last year. It's just a short pamphlet. I didn't write haiku for about 10 years, first 10 years of being a poet, because I feel that they're actually, like, maybe for me, the highest poetic form and the most difficult, like the simplest. Like I would teach others how to do it, but to do it myself seemed really monumentally difficult because they're so pure and they're so perfect and everything's got to be precise and it's got to be intuited. I feel like with those, inspiration probably plays a greater part than certain other poetry forms. So yeah, I've written haiku, and also I've written a form called dodoitsu, which is a kind of comedy form, which I learned from a storytelling teacher there. I studied a form of storytelling on my last visit to Japan. And that's when I was a performance poet and interested more in the stage. Yeah, so I recommend visiting. And I'm sure we've all written haiku, haven't we? Everyone's had a go at haiku. I have got a Wikipedia page, Glenda. It's very short.
I've seen that. It's more or less your introduction tonight.
I think that's where you got it from, maybe. Yeah. A lovely poet called Zoe Brigley made it for me. It's very kind of her to do that. Seems a bit grandiose, but anyway.
Can I just make one objection here? I don't like I'm being half glib here, but I don't like this distinction between artist and poet. I think poets are also artists, psychologically as well as the medium they deal with. I know you didn't mean that, but I wanted to put my foot down there. I do think poetry is like kind of in continuity with the fine arts and other kind of, at least the psychological level, I think, as creative writers or what have you. Anyway, sorry to interrupt. Anyone else got any questions or comments they'd like to make about any of our brilliant poets this evening? There's nothing on the chat room, and for some reason, I'm not seeing the hands going up. If someone would put their hand up so I could just check, see if it's going to be coming through. And if you are putting your hand up and I'm not getting you, could you just nudge me on the chat box, please?
I see a question in the chat box by Nahla.
Oh, yes, sorry. Nahla says,
yeah.
What advice would you give someone whose dream is to write and publish a poetry book? So let's go for Rula first and then Mab, please.
Well, I think Mab is the expert here. But
sorry,
my advice,
is it the question in the chat? What advice would you give someone who's dreaming?
Yes.
Book? Well, I mean, hopefully you do write poetry, and then you send it out to kind of work ethic. I think. Am I breaking up? It says my connection is.
Now you're okay.
Now you're okay.
Good. I mean, this dream is easily achievable, I think, but you have to go through the hard work of writing the poems, and then sending the poems out, basically, I think. And there are lots of poetry publishers, aren't there? I'm sure I'm frozen again. Can you hear what I'm saying?
Yeah, we can hear you.
You're okay.
Yeah. You're frozen now.
Now you're frozen.
Now you're back. Now you're okay.
Okay.
Yep. Right. I mean, Mab gave you expert advice, Nahla. I would also, of course, ditto that. But from my experience, if you really want to get your book out there, you need to write it first. So I think it'll find its way. As Mab said, there are so many publishers nowadays, but you need to go through the process of writing it. And once it's there, it's there. And, then is the process of looking for a publisher that you feel comfortable with and you would like to publish with.
One tip is, it's always helpful if you can to, when you've got 5 or 6 poems you think are really good work, start sending them off to magazines and get a little kind of miniature CV of a few publications and magazines, because publishers will look a lot more kind of avidly at you if you've got a little bit of a kind of track record of having a few poems here and there published, I think. So that's just one bit of advice, I think, one of the part of the process, I think. I think that's true for most people who want to and then do get published, I think. So, yeah.
And do have another pair of eyes look at them before. So if you have any poet friends, mentors, then I think that's a great idea as well.
And Maura says, try and put out individual poems, especially where you think, in terms of magazines or publishers, I think she means, where you think your kind of approach to writing poetry is kind of looked on with enthusiasm or with approval. I mean, because there are obviously very different ways of writing poetry, and some publishers are, you know, prejudicial because they have a history of publishing that kind of poet, as it were. So I think that's very good advice from Maura, that, you know, when you've got some work, look for where you think it would find a natural audience, you know, and that might be helpful, I think. Yeah.
Mm.
Trail has said good night. There are no more questions I can see in the, wait, here we go. Oh, good. So Nahala, you've taken it on board. That's great. Thank you. Anyone else got any questions or comments they'd like to make to either of our poets, or indeed in general? Yeah, Glenda says, join a poetry work. This goes to Nahala's question again. You could always join a poetry workshop group where you can get feedback on your work from other poets. And of course, don't get discouraged if a particular editor rejects your work. Keep writing it better. I think that's a truth that every poet will tell you, is that be ready for rejection. Do not get discouraged by rejection, because rejection is more than in anything else in life, a fact of life in the poetry world. So I think, you know, you have to be ready to be denied, as it were. So we don't get discouraged. I think that's the message that Glenda's saying there. Yeah. Believe in yourself, basically. And you'll get there. So I can't see anything else. Rula, can you see something I can't, just in case? Any hands up I can't see?
I can't see anyone's hands. Nope. Nope.
Okay.
And I can't see any questions in the chat box. I'm looking for the question marks, quick scan. I can't see any. But thank you all for the wonderful comments.
No,
So many nice comments there.
I thought personally it was a nice combination, Rula and Mab, because they are very different kinds of poets, and so we got two very different voices tonight. I think it was quite a treat. Anyone else?
Sorry, I don't know what's going on with the Wi-Fi. It just sort of disappeared, and then the world disappears, and then one feels very alone. So I'm glad that I'm back now. Apologies.
And that's a poem, what you just said.
Well, it's a poem, or is it a kind of showing off? You know, I get to speak to so few human beings now. Yeah. Maybe I think everything I say is a poem these days, because human interaction is so rare. So, are there any further questions?
Or? Is there anyone else who would like to say something or ask something?
I didn't answer about the publishing, but hopefully you gave just as good a reply as I would have.
We got a few insights from Glenda and from yeah.
Great.
Right, Rula, what do you say? Do we, if there's no more questions, do we call it a night, or would you like to?
If there aren't any more questions, then maybe we would take this opportunity to thank everybody who was here. First of all, I want to thank Mab. Thank you, Mab, so much again for this wonderful, wonderful evening or afternoon or morning.
Thank you so much for putting this on, Rula, and really giving such great support to loads of other poets. And that is like a massive undertaking, and it's a lot of work and energy on your part. So thank you firstly for that, all the organising, all the marketing, all the setup. And thank you for reading your beautiful poems, which I had read before but hadn't fully heard you read. And it was lovely to hear some newer pieces as well with those.
Thank you for everything, really. I mean, you did a lot of marketing yourself, so thanks for spreading the word, and thanks for inviting me. And I mean, for the lovely poetry. We learned so much. I mean, we learned that your real name isn't Mab. We learned about you bits of me.
What it is.
No, we'll leave that a little mystery.
Yes.
And yeah, it was lovely. It was really, really lovely.
That was lovely.
Thank you, and thanks Omar for hosting so in such a charming way, and also
thank you, Omar.
Your poem too. That was great.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm encouraged now to find out more and read more of your work, Mab, and I know Rula's work quite well, and I'll be looking forward to her new collection as well. And just to one comment to Liana, who's just put a comment on the chat box saying, "Nice like this inspire me to write my own poems one day." Well, no, it shouldn't be one day. It should be either tonight or tomorrow. You know, you want to get on with it. You know, come on, you shouldn't think of it as beyond you or anything like that. You know, and I'm sure you know, if you believe in yourself, you can get somewhere. And enjoy the process, no doubt. So if there's no one else making any comments, I just want to thank everyone for making this.
Chun,
Oh,
Chun has
sorry,
something to
Chun, I'm
say.
sorry.
Well,
Chun.
I just want to apologize. I showed up late because I thought it was 9 o'clock here, San Francisco time. It's 9:30 now. I must have missed the whole meeting. Because Rola, I in your message you say it's 9 p.m.
Really?
Yeah. Sorry. I should have.
Oh my God. Okay, then that's my bad. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry about
but
that.
It's so great to meet you all, see you all here. And I'm really.
Thank you, Chun, so much. Chun, you are a wonderful poet, a wonderful poet / scientist. So Chun is the bridge between poetry and science.
Oh, thank you. Mab, I just heard so much about you. I was so looking forward to the.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh no, this is a really terrible thing. I hope you can watch the recording and.
Oh yeah,
yes, hopefully.
I'm sorry you couldn't take part. This is the way of the internet, isn't it? I mean, this happened to me before with the time zones and.
Yeah, we changed time.
Now with daylight saving hours and you know, the clock's turning. I'm really sorry about that.
That's okay. Well, I will watch the video for sure.
Lovely to meet you very briefly.
Great to meet you and see you all.
I wanted to say we're all here now, but it's really a different now for us in different parts of the world. It's kind of a strange time transcendence.
Yes, it is. It's really amazing. You don't know what to say. Is it good morning? I mean, it's good morning for Chun. It's good afternoon for Mab. It's good evening here. It's very different.
Tea time here now. Good old British tea time.
Well, I mean, Aisha just thanks everyone and Rula in particular for this evening. It was
Thank you, Omar, for taking care of this, moderating.
Well, I did my best. This was my losing my virginity as a host. I felt like I could do it once in my life, and I think I've done it as well as I could. So thank you everyone for attending. I thought it was a wonderful evening. We enjoyed some beautiful poetry, and I presume, is there any final words, Mab or Rula, or any?
Just thank you. It was a really lovely event, and it was just nice
really
to
lovely.
share it with such a warm bunch, I think, this time. So yeah, it was lovely.
Thank you, Mab. Thank you for doing us the honor and being here tonight.
Yeah, Bernard was talking about the heart, and I felt like this was an event led by the heart. So it was really, really lovely, and I feel the Welsh word is cwtch, like kind of a hug. I feel quite cwtched by this experience. So thanks, everyone.
Well, sending you our hugs as well, and looking forward to seeing you again. We're really looking forward to your new book, and hopefully you get to read straight from it on Indelible Evenings.
Yeah, let's all read each other's books and let's all stay in touch. And we're all mostly poets or wannabe poets, so we should all, share our work, I think.
And Mab, did you include your Twitter information, other social media information?
There are no other Mab Joneses as far as I know. So if you just
look for Mab Jones, right?
On everything, yeah.
Right.
Okay, well, then with that, we'll say good night, good morning, good afternoon, and have a great evening or afternoon or morning. And we look forward to seeing you at the later and forthcoming Indelible evenings. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, we have another event coming up soon this Saturday. This is for Site Creative, which is the psychology / art section of Indelible. Our guest will be, the opening speaker will be Dr. Birgit Hoyer, and she'll be talking about quantum theory and Jung. So it's a very, very interesting topic. And Glenda will be doing a little talk also about, Glenda, would you like to give a little summary here? A little teaser, not really a summary.
Sure. It's on the issue of abandonment, the sense of abandonment, and I call it Ariadne and me. And it's about how I came to get involved as a Gestalt practitioner and then write a play about Ariadne as the main character rather than her abandoner, Theseus, and to recognize the Theseus and Ariadne part in all of us. That's basically it.
Sounds fascinating.
In 10 minutes.
And then we'll have, yeah. And then we might have an open mic. So who knows? Maybe Chun will read, maybe Omar will read, maybe someone else in the audience. So we look forward to seeing you there. And stay in touch. Follow Indelible if you haven't yet. And have a wonderful day, everyone.
Or evening.
Bye.
Or midnight.
Bye.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Yes.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.